Hello, it's your storyteller Chip here, back with another epic sharing special. It's really good to see you again. And if you caught the beginning of our story about Merchant Ali, then you will know that Ali and his brother Kasim had been into the forest and found a cave full of treasures. And they had taken some of those treasures back to their village. Now, you might think, if you haven't heard the story, that they were stealing. But of course, everything inside that cave had already been stolen by some brigands who were really mean people who hid out in the forest and threatened others with their big swords so that they could steal from them. And so some of the things that Ali and Kasim had taken, like a teddy bear, were actually treasures that belonged to people in their village. Like, I think the teddy bear belonged to the farmer's daughter, didn't it? So if you haven't yet seen the start of the story of Merchant Ali and the 40 Brigands, then I highly recommend you stop watching this video and go and find that one. Find the start of the story, because otherwise everything else I'm going to say here is not going to make much sense to you. And I'm sure everybody who's watching this now and who has seen the start of that story will tell you it's a really good one, so you should really go and see it. Of course, once you've seen it, you will know that to get into the cave, you had to speak some magic words. And the words were, "Open Sesame." But Ali and Kasim also realized that it wasn't just about the words, it was about how you said the words. And they were using fancy marks, weren't they, to change how to actually say the words "Open Sesame." Those fancy marks were called punctuation. I think it was their sister, Morgiana, who had shown them how to use some of these special marks. But the thing was that those brigands, well, they kept changing the way to say the magic words, didn't they? Because when Ali went in, he only took a little bit of treasure, but whenever Kasim went in, he would always fill his bag full. So the brigands knew someone was coming in and taking their treasure. So of course, they tried to keep people out. And they kept using different sounds, which meant Morgiana had to keep coming up with different marks. And in our epic challenge, we asked you to send in some new marks to show how you might say "Open Sesame." Well, here we have a wonderful picture that's been sent in by Adela to show exactly how this is done. And you can see her marks right there. Open with a question mark. And then sesame, there's a little line above the A. And I know that in some languages, they put marks above vowels to make them longer. Maybe also louder, because sometimes we put lines around letters or words to make them louder. So maybe it needs to be louder too. And at the very end, she's put those 3 dots, the ellipsis, which lets you know that there's some mystery. You say the word almost like you're saying a secret. So I'm going to have a go now and see if I can say these magic words exactly how Adela thinks her brigands would be sharing the magic words. This, you see, is her brigand, and there's Ali up in the tree. Do you know how I know that's Ali? It's because he's counting, isn't it? If it was Kasim, he was too foolish to count. So Ali's there, he's listening to the brigand, and I think, reading what Adela's written there, he is saying, "Open Sesame." Well, now as a special treat, I've been told that we're going to listen to Adela say the words just to see how close I've got. So let's listen now to Adela.
My phrase is open sesame.
Fantastic. Well, I don't think I was far off, was I? Maybe I shouldn't have been quite so loud in the middle of the word sesame. But I love the way that she said it there. It makes it sound even more mysterious, doesn't it? We should definitely, I think, use more lines like that, even in English. The power of punctuation to change the sound of words is brilliant, isn't it? And we should be incredibly grateful to Adela for this beautiful picture and her punctuation, because thanks to her, I can now share with you the end of the story. So let's have a huge thank you, Adela, for sharing with us so that we can share the end of the story with you. Of course, if you still want to send in some more punctuation, please do. That epic challenge is still out there, and maybe I'll have a go at someone else's next sharing special. But right now, thanks to Adela, let's find out how the story ends for Merchant Ali and the 40 Brigands. The leader of the Brigands, who had the big turban and the shiny cloak, poked Kasim with his sword all the way to the edge of the forest. All of the other brigands were around them as they looked down at the village. And as they did, the leader thought for a moment. And then he turned to all of the brigands and he said, "Well, out here in the forest, we are dangerous. But out there in the village, there are lots of people, even more than us 40. So we need to be careful. Don't worry though, I have a plan." First, the leader told his men to tie Kasim to a tree with a big rope so that he couldn't move at all. Then they put some of that rope in his mouth so that he couldn't make a sound or call for help. They weren't going to kill him yet, just in case he'd been lying about the treasure being in that home. If he was lying, they would need him to tell the truth. If he was telling the truth, then they would come back and kill him. Next, the leader took off his cloak, turned it inside out, and then put it on again. So now, instead of being a silver color, it was brown. And he took his sword and hid it in his sock. So he didn't look like a brigand anymore. He looked like a merchant. And with that, the leader left all of his men and Kasim in the forest. And he went into the village pretending to be a merchant. He pretended that he had some sugar to sell, but his cart had broken. He asked the people in the village where he could get a new cart, and they took him to the cart builder. After buying a cart, the leader took it back into the forest with 39 sacks, and every single brigand got into the sacks and tightened it up so they were completely hidden. And the leader then took the cart and dragged it into the village all the way up to the front door of Kasim's house, where Ali and Morgiana were inside. The leader knocked on the door, and the door was answered by Morgiana. So the leader said, "Kind lady, I am here. I'm a merchant and I have 39 sacks of sugar. I wondered whether your brother might be interested in buying them from me." Morgiana said that Ali was in the back, so she invited the leader into their home while she called him. And when Ali came into the room, he didn't recognize the leader. Not just because his cloak was inside out and brown, but because, well, remember, Ali had only ever seen the leader whilst up in his tree. He'd been looking down on that big turban, so he'd never seen the leader's face. He didn't recognize the leader. In fact, he shook hands with the leader and said he'd be very happy to buy some sugar. How many sacks did the leader have? "Well, I have 39 sacks. Would you like to bring them into your house?" Well, Ali replied to that, actually, no, because, as Ali said, they had lots of ants in their home, and ants really like sugar. They didn't want to have the ants crawling all over the sacks. So Ali asked the leader just to wait a moment while he went to get the key to their shed, and they'd put all of the sugar in there. So off went Ali. But while Ali and this visitor had been talking, Morgiana had been looking and thinking. 39 plus 1 is 40. That's how many brigands Ali had said there were. And as Morgiana looked, she could see the outline of a sword in the leader's sock. He was the brigand! Was he there to kill Ali with all his 39 friends who were probably hiding in those sacks? Was he going to kill Morgiana herself? What had they done to Kasim? Had they already killed him? All of these thoughts were going around inside Morgiana's head. She had to do something. She knew she had to do something. But what? That merchant or leader or whatever he was really strong. Morgiana, well, she was weak. She'd never had a fight in her life. But as she thought about this, Morgiana noticed some of those ants crawling around the floor. They were crawling around in circles and straight lines and over each other and under each other. It was almost like they were dancing. And that gave Morgiana an idea. She said to the leader, "While you're waiting, would you like me to dance for you? I know a special knife dance from Arabia." And since Ali was taking some time, the leader said, Yes, please, I would love to see you dance." So Morgiana went and got some knives, and she began to do her special knife dance around the room. She was dancing so beautifully that the leader could hardly take his eyes off her, until Ali came back into the room holding the key and saying, "Found it." At that moment, the leader looked at Ali. So Morgiana danced right up close to him and then stuck the knife right into his chest. The leader was so surprised he couldn't do anything to stop it, and he fell down to the floor. Ali was quite surprised too, until Morgiana showed him the inside of the cloak, which was, of course, the same shiny colour that Ali had seen from up in the tree, and showed him the sword that was hidden inside his leg. When Morgiana explained that there were 39 sacks on that cart, they probably didn't have sugar in them, they probably had brigands inside. Ali was wondering, what could they possibly do? It was a shame, really, that they weren't actually sacks of sugar, because then all of the ants would crawl inside and start to eat away at the sugar and probably make the brigands all scratch and want to get up and run away. And that made Morgiana think, okay, they didn't have any sugar, but they did have honey. And ants really liked honey as well. So, very carefully, Morgiana and Ali went to the cart and poured a little bit of honey into each of those 39 sacks. Within minutes, the ants had come out from Morgiana and Ali's home and gone into each of those sacks and started nibbling away at the brigands, so they began to get all itchy and scratchy. They couldn't help it. They had to burst out from inside those sacks. And when they did, they saw their leader lying down with a sword in his chest. They saw all the people of the village staring at them, looking really angry. And they realized they had no hope. They could only run off into the forest. They ran through the forest. They ran completely out of the story. And so they were never seen again. Well, Ali and Morgiana went into the forest to see what had happened to Qasim. And so, of course, they didn't get far before finding him tied to the tree. They were able to release him to come all the way back home. And soon after they got home, they were praised by everyone in the village as heroes. Word got out for miles around that now it was safe to walk through the forest. It didn't matter whether you were a farmer, a teacher, or a princess. In fact, there was one princess who was really happy to be going through that forest, because she'd heard that Ali had been in that cave and found a necklace with a picture of a unicorn on it. Do you remember that one? It turned out that necklace with the unicorn belonged to the princess. So she could now go through the forest and fetch it back from Ali. And when the princess and Ali met each other, they fell in love. Very soon, they were married. And not long after that, they actually had a little girl, a daughter. And when that little girl grew up, she made friends with a young boy who had been exploring through the forest and had found a cave full of all sorts of interesting treasures, including a magic lamp. But that, of course, is another story. I wonder if you can tell which one. Well, there you are, folks. I really hope you enjoyed the ending of the story of Merchant Ali and the 40 Brigands as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I especially hope that Adela enjoyed it because, of course, it's her wonderful response to our epic challenge that has allowed me to share it with you. And don't forget, if you've got any pictures or punctuation that you want to share with us, please still send it to epictales.co.uk/challenge. Maybe I'll have a go at saying how you think the magic word should be said. Also, if you've enjoyed that story, Keep looking around www.epictales.co.uk because very soon you'll be able to hear Amber Licorice telling the Slavic version of that story. It's quite different, but there are some similarities. I wonder if you can spot the differences and spot the things that are the same. Right now, though, it only remains for me to say cheerio, and I hope to hear your story soon. So, cheerio! And I hope to hear your story soon.